Well, let's talk about this producer. Who are we looking at here?
Well, this is a newcomer.
2009.
This is a
New
newcomer
one for you, right?
producer for us. We've only worked with them for 20 years, as opposed to 21 years with the Barthelme family at Albert Mann. This is Pierre Chermet and his wife Martine. They are, for me, one of the reference points.
$19 US.
Of my portfolio, and many people, sort of associate Pierre Chermet and Domaine Vissou with me because, when I first discovered them, they were one of the leaders in the back to basics movement in Beaujolais.
And what was happening at the time?
Well, at the time, a major producer
DeBoeuf
was
I'll save you time.
Was really monopolizing
Yeah.
the market in Beaujolais and taking it in a direction very, very commercial.
Very.
The
Nouveau phenomenon was in full.
There were
tilt.
a few guys who were trying to get back to basics. And Pierre's father was an old time grower, and Pierre studied enology at Dijon. Stayed on because he was very good and on the faculty, and decided he wanted to perfect Beaujolais, and the way to do that was to go back to the way Beaujolais was done before World War II.
Do you believe, as you know, and I know you're too busy doing your own thing, so you haven't watched all 950 episodes of Wine Library TV, I've said at least, I don't know, Matt, what do you think, 12 times, 15 times, which would be a high percentage, that Beaujolais is probably the most underpriced, over-delivering category maybe in the wine world right now that we can get. We're talking about a producer of the highest quality here, $19.
Yeah, this is his Old Vines cuvee. The vines range in age from 45 to 90 years old. And, it's...
Do you believe that the Gamay grape is, in the scheme of things, probably grossly underappreciated and underrated?
Well, the observation that I would make on that is, I can't remember what the date was, but it was, I believe, in the 20s. There was a catalog of a distributor in France that offered Gevrey Chambertin, Vosne Romanée, and Moulin au Vent at the same price.
And those were two top Burgundy, properties and a top cru Beaujolais.
Yeah.
And now those Burgundy producers easily command, 80 to 150, $200.
No, 5 to 6 times the price of Moulin au Vent.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think it's just...
I think about that all the time. I'm a huge
the potential is there.
I'm a huge Chinon drinker. And I also have some old catalogs I bought on eBay and some auctions, like collector catalogs, like 1930s. Chinon was more expensive. Certain producers of Chinon in the 30s were more expensive than Bordeaux.
Yeah.
So, what's old is new again. The reason I get excited about doing this show is I know what the internet's going to do. And I know right now our great grandkids are watching this, and maybe Gamay is more expensive than Bordeaux. They're like, oh wow, back then they
thought Gamay wasn't as good as Vosne.
I do believe that.
Well,
I do believe in that.
Especially the ageability of these wines.
Well, to speak to that, I don't talk about that a lot. Well, how long would you say this is proper? What's its zone?
A cru Beaujolais. This is Village Beaujolais, by the way. This is not one of the cru, but
a Morgon, a Milan.
I've kept just this level Beaujolais for 10 years.
Really?
And they age beautifully. The cru in a good cellar can age 20 years.
And I think this is really important because 90% of you, when you think about Beaujolais, you think about the Beaujolais Nouveau with the flowers that comes around Thanksgiving that expires within 5 minutes, probably a year. And meanwhile, for a couple of dollars more in the scheme of things, there's wines of this caliber out there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's
and the floral kind of aspect,
the complexity of
the roses, the strawberry on the nose, gorgeous.
Yep. And it's so enjoyable at different levels. When it's young like this, you get the forward fruit, the bright fruit, the exuberant fruit. As it ages, it takes on more of, as the expression is, the Pinot character.
It gets more
Moulin
earthy,
au
right?
Vent Morgon with 7-8 years in bottle almost fools you as being a Côte d'Or Pinot Noir. Yeah.
Now, as we're about to segue into the Châteauneuf-du-Pape, let's see what vintage. What is your take? We spent a lot of time in the last year on Wine Library TV on the 07 Châteauneuf-du-Pape vintage. What was your take on that vintage?
I think it was an exceptional vintage.
You do?
I do. I think 2006 was exceptional. I think 2007 is exceptional. It's a different style.
It was very big.
Very big.
07, right?
Very big.
Didn't get too ripe, too big for you?
Depends on the grower again. There were certainly domains that went over the top with their 2007s. But I happen to have the honor and privilege and good fortune to represent people like Laurent Charvin, whose 07s came in at 14.9, 15.
Right, didn't get it.
Not 17%
right.
alcohol.
And so we decanted this one, I see.
Yeah,
I'm going to rinse
this is the 2008.
Yeah.
I wanted to.
So let's.
I'm
glad you did.
I wanted to show you this because.
I was in Rhone tasting 08s, and obviously there's a lot of conversation that they're not of the quality of the 07s. Off vintage, not as exciting. Parker, who's a big influence in the Rhone, what did he give the 07 Chardonnay score?
97 plus.
Right, so 97 plus for the 07. What did he give the 08?
88 to 90.
So clearly the consumer's seeing that. Meanwhile, when I was there, I was pretty fond of them because I felt pretty much across the board for me, at least for my palate, that the 07s did get too hedonistic, too over the top. But the 08s were a lot more kind of like, I always said, like the Châteauneuf-du-Pape that I grew up with. Oh. It felt Châteauneuf-du-Pape has changed quite a bit in the last 20 years.
Oh, yes.
The wines have definitely stylistically gotten bigger.
Yeah, very much.
So when I was tasting through the 08s, I remember thinking, wow, this is the stuff I kind of remembered when I was drinking some 89s and 91, vintages that weren't even that exciting. 91, some clunkers there. So you brought the 08. Why?
Well,
you don't like me that much?
I brought you my best. What did that tell you?
So this is
I started with Laurent Charvin in 19.
I started with $43. Sorry, go ahead.
I started with Laurent Charvin in 1992. 1990 was the first vintage I bought from him.
Oh boy!
It was the first vintage that he made.
It was good timing.
And he got a very good score, and he and I both thought, "Now this is nice."
This is a good start.
Yeah. And so we've worked together now for nearly 20 years, 19 years. If you look at the color on this, and you would think back to the color of the Chateau Rayas made by Jacques Reynaud, this is the color of Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
Yeah, I mean, 1990 Reyes is one of my favorite wines of all time.
He makes.
Sorry, thanks, Mark.
He makes a wine very much in the style of Rayas, very traditional, whole cluster fermentation, and you look at his hands.
So he's inspired by what was going on?
He works the vineyards himself very, very hard.
Did he ever work with Reyes or
no,
intern there?
No,
just was inspired.
No,
by it.
He just
he's
he
a
met
very
him.
Top producer, legendary Châteauneuf-du-Pape producer.
Yeah, he met Jacques Reynaud once.
He did before he passed.
That was it.
Yeah.
But he is kind of the carrier of the torch.
You think so?
So to speak. Yeah, I think in terms of this style, yes, I do. This is a very classic blend, and I think it shows that in 2008 there are wines that have beautiful fruit, balance, complexity. This is a wine that will age, maybe not like the 05, 06, but will certainly age 15 years.
Sure. Let's give it a whirl. I mean, I love the pepper on the nose.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of gaminess there, which I really enjoy.
Very
very spicy.
Yeah.
Really good. Again, medium to full-bodied, which is kind of what I'm looking for. Again, I don't feel like I'm drinking reduction of licorice juice here. It's not like drinking paint, and it's just really a refreshing style that I wish all of the Rhone Valley would start paying attention to in general. I think Châteauneuf-du-Pape, for at least my palate, has gotten a little too big, has gone through similar kind of, transition that I feel like the U.S. and Australia went through. I'd like to see it come down to earth a little bit. I'm very curious to taste through the 09s, because I know they're going to be bigger again a little bit than the 08s, for sure.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, I was hoping when I was tasting through the 08s that a lot of the producers, forget about the press, because I knew what the press was going to do. I mean, that 88 to 90 Parker is no surprise. What I was hoping is that the producers themselves saw what kind of style came out of this 08 vintage and recognized some of the charm and charisma and characteristics that maybe they grew up with. That was a very big hope of mine, actually. Now, why did '08 kind of happen like this? Was there a lot of rain?
There were two rains.
Right?
There were two big storms. There were two rains. One on. I always go to Europe, to France for the harvest. For the last 8 years, I've been there for every harvest.
And so you're there in which months?
September, and I was there was a rain on September the 11th, and then there was another rain on September the 18th. And,
1 week apart.
Yep. And Laurent harvested between the two rains, just before the second rain.
And you feel like the people that were sitting on the vine that got caught by the second rain really got diluted.
That might have been a problem.
Yeah. And that happened to a lot of people because they were hoping to kind of stick it out, right?
Yeah.
Why did Laurent feel that he was able to pick in between, right after that rain, when a lot of people were hoping to dry out and get a spike or something of that nature? What was his sensibility to pick at that point? Because that was probably unusual. There's not a lot of people that I think picked in between that time.
Well, he works in the vines very, very well, very, very hard. And he, by tilling the soil a lot, you have healthier vines, vines that are a little more advanced actually in the maturation process.
So you mean a 7-year-old vine can act like a 12-year-old vine?
So he can gain a few days over his fellow growers in terms of ripeness.
I see.
By the
so
way,
within the vintage, not so much. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened there.
Yeah.
And he felt like he was ready to go.
Oh yeah.
Was he upset about the rain on the 11th?
Well, I think for every grower, each vintage has its own challenges and its own also opportunities. And I think that one of the things, as an importer, I'm a little bit prejudiced in this regard, is that I am very closely attached to represent my producers. And I understand that every year nature deals them a different hand. And that every year is not going to be the same. We're not going to have an '07 every year, or an '09 or an '06. That one of the really interesting things for me about wine, the pursuit of wine, is seeing what the producer does with the vintage. And a really, really good producer in a vintage like '08 or '07, because that's equally important to have a man or a woman who is being, who is doing
challenged in different directions,
who is doing the best, who's not getting it overripe in '07, but is getting maximum ripeness in '08. What they do, because I have Chardonnay every vintage, because it's very, very gratifying to see what these people have done. 10 years after the vintage, how the wines evolve.
Peter, I'm gonna do a series of rapid questions, just quick little answers. What is this is a hard one. I'll start you off with a hard one. What is? It doesn't have to be the best one you've ever had, but what is? Maybe name one of the single 5 most memorable wines you've ever had.
Well, it'd be hard to say, but certainly I would have to put one of Laurent's wines in. His '01 right now is extraordinary. One that will always be in my memory is the 1978 La Tâche.
78 DRC La Tâche.
Yes.
Why?
The bouquet was just
from a quality standpoint.
Unforgettable. The length, the complexity, the nuance.
Is there a wine that sits in your mind not because of quality, but because of the evening or the experience or who was there? Anything like that?
That aside.
That aside.
Yeah, that's hard to do. Jackie Truchot's wines, his Chambertin 99 is a great wine. One of the first wines that I had that really set my palate for French wine back in 1973 was a 1969 Chambol Musigny of Jean Griveaux. And I still remember that. That got me going.
That was the kind of like wine is like this.
Yeah.
Or can be like this.
Yeah.
If you had one dish, a meal, what would be the, could be silly, could be McDonald's French fries, I don't care. A dish. What is the dish that, last meal kind of dish, something that really sets you on fire? What's your favorite dish?
Well, several years ago I had the dumb luck to be in Paris. I came to Paris the night before my flight. Had a few hours to spare. So I went to a bistro in Paris, where the owner was the sommelier of the world in 1992. And he had great collection of wines by the glass on the menu.
So you knew about this place. You knew where you were going.
Yeah. And
you didn't just stumble into this.
No, I knew where I was going, but I stumbled into it on the right night.
Got it.
And I ordered one of my most favorite meals,
which is
with poulet or chicken in a cream of morels, cream sauce with morels.
Lots of mushrooms.
And he was doing that night Henri Jaillet, Croix Parent 2, 1989, by the glass.
An outrageous Burgundy, just outrageous.
And I got lucky.
Tremendous producer.
That was a memorable meal and a memorable glass.
That's amazing.
I'd put that in the top 5 too, Gary.
Outside of wine, which is clearly a passion of yours, you can't do anything with wine tomorrow, and you could do anything. What are you gonna do? Fish? Watch a game? What would you do?
I can't have anything to do with wine?
Nothing.
Whew. That's tough. Gary, you've thrown me out of the water. I'm on the dry land and my gills are...
Nothing to do with wine. Is there a certain book that you would read? Would you go to the movies? Or do you want to hunt? I would watch a New York Jets game, of course, as you could tell by my office. What would you do?
I'd probably go back to farming.
No kidding.
Yeah,
You'd go farm for the day.
I love the land, yeah.
Really, really fascinating. What is your favorite press moment? I think a lot of people try to say they don't care about the press, but come on, that's very, very silly. What was the one time you opened up a magazine, whether it was a Parker or a Spectator, you saw a score and it just put a smile on your face? Maybe not even because it was going to impact your own sales. Maybe that ship had sailed. Maybe it was because you felt good for the producer, because I know your emotion with the producers. Or maybe it was even for a prior producer. Somebody, maybe you even, a moment that you really remember putting a smile on your face, seeing a score that kind of, I believe that Charvin could be in that story too. I remember when he kind of took the jump in Parker's world, because all of a sudden he started getting monster scores instead of very good scores.
Yeah, but this 1990 vintage, that was the first that I had with Laurent.
Yep.
Getting that 93, 94 point score is what really made me.
Is that right?
Made me very happy. The scores themselves. There's always good scores and there's always scores that you're disappointed in.
Do you have a disappointing story?
Oh, every issue.
Every issue. But are you?
I always want.
So are you saying that and I know this happens with importer, the 90 vintage of this. In Robert Parker, 93 or 94 points, and at the bottom, obviously, it said your information and phone number.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Did you get bombarded? Was that your coming out party?
Oh, my, yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, my, yes. So that was your coming out. Was that your first issue with wines in the Advocate?
No, that was the first, 93, 94. I had a Côte Rôtie that got 93, and I think his got 94.
And that kind of started.
Yeah.
People started, distributors around the country started calling and saying, how do I carry your wines, retailers?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yep.
That was a fun moment, right?
Yes, that was good.
There's a lot of hard work up to that point.
Oh, it's a good question of whether any of this is work. It's just a lot of time and a lot of effort, but knowing these people, working with these people is really an honor.
And have you tasted with a lot of the critics? I know Parker tastes with importers. Did you taste directly with Parker, or you submitted wines?
Both.
Both?
And I've tasted, not with the people at Spectator. I mean, I taste at times, but then I always submit.
Sure. How about Tanzer?
Not tasted with Steve.
You've submitted.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of Steve's palate? I think he's a great writer.
Oh, I have nothing but admiration for actually all the wine writers, because it is very, very difficult.
One, because you're a smart guy saying that on public and TV.
But what they do, sticking your neck out there,
sure,
putting it in print for all the world to look at. But certainly Steve, I respect his palate enormously, and his palate is probably a little more
conservative.
Yeah.
So the tradition of this show, Peter, is that the guest gets to ask the Vayner Nation the question of the day. So in the comments section, I knew this was good. This is fun for me, throwing you this curveball. In the comments section, you'll get hundreds of responses to your question. So any question you'd like to know from a very good cross mix of wine drinkers around the U.S., what would be the question that you would want to know? It's a good opportunity to do a little, like a focus group, maybe a burning question that maybe you debate with your wine friends and want to get some sensibility from hundreds of different opinions.
Well, I think one of the things that, I enjoy wine very, very much. It's interesting that
I can tell you were stunned by the question outside of wine.
People ask me, do you like wine as much as you used to? And I say, I like wine more than I ever used to. And so I guess what I'd ask people is what they find most important to them in a wine that they want to drink every night. Because special occasion wines, that's
a different thing.
That's a different thing. But,
in the wines that you want to drink on a daily basis, what is the core principle that makes you
because
make that choice?
I know what I like to drink every night, you know. But
what do you like to drink every night?
I like a lot of Rhones. I like Sancerres, Chablis, Burgundies. Particularly, I drink often Charvin's Côte du Rhône with a few years age on it because I like that complexity, that nuance. But I'd be curious to see what your listeners do.
Peter.
Thank you very much, Gary.
This was really pleasurable.
I really enjoyed it.
Me too.
Thank you.
You, with a little bit of me, and definitely guys like this, we're changing the wine world.